Greetings, nerdlings, and welcome to AmalgamNation presents World of Loreccraft, Citycraft, Orgrimmar Edition. Orgrimmar has been the central hub of the Orcish community since the end of the Third War. The city was founded by Thrall and named after his friend and mentor, the former war chief Orgrim Doomhammer. It is a fortified complex guarded by stout walls, massive gates and tall towers. The mountainous ranges of northern Durotar form a natural barrier to the rear of the fortress, and parts of the complex are carved into the mountain itself. Orgrimmar is openly hospitable to all members of the Horde and is an important centre of commerce. Visitors may fly into the city by way of Zeppelin or Wyvern, or simply walk through the fortress's main gates. Thrall led the orcs to the continent of Kalimdor, where they founded a new homeland with the help of their Tauren brethren. Naming their new land Durotar after Thrall's father, Durotan, the orcs settled down to rebuild their once glorious society. The demonic curse on their kind ended. The Horde changed from a bloodthirsty warlike juggernaut into more of a loose coalition dedicated to survival and prosperity rather than conquest. Aided by the noble Tauren and the cunning trolls of the Dark Spear tribe, Thrall and his orcs looked forward to a new era of peace in their own land. From there they began the creation of the great warrior city, Orgrimmar. Today Orgrimmar lies at the base of a mountain between Durotar and Azshara. A warrior city indeed, it is home to countless amounts of orcs, trolls and Tauren. An increasing amount of Forsaken are now joining the city, as well as the Blood Elves who have recently been accepted into the Horde. The city was attacked by the Scourge during the duel between Thrall and Garrosh. The duel had to be stopped as orcs and some other leaders of the Horde went to defend the city. During the war against the Lich King, Putris betrayed the Forsaken, and Sylvanas and her loyal Forsaken had to take refuge in Orgrimmar. From here, Sylvanas, Thrall and the Horde adventurers returned and liberated the Undercity. During that time, all merchants and services had been shut down as the war chief prepared for an unavoidable conflict. As the whole of Azeroth fell into the mists of the Emerald Nightmare, so did Orgrimmar with its citizens. Orgrimmar was attacked by raging elements, but the attack was successfully repelled. After the war against the Lich King and the war against the Nightmare were over, a great celebration was held in honour of Garrosh and those who died and survived on Northrend. Nevertheless, raging fire elementals burned plenty of buildings in Orgrimmar, and the city needed to be repaired. Thrall asked Gazlo to do so and determined to set off to Nagrand in order to help the raging elementals. Before leaving, in Grommash Hole, Thrall appointed Garrosh to lead the Horde. With the cataclysm over and the threat of Deathwing subsided, a summit of the Horde's leaders was held in Orgrimmar. Here Garrosh informed his allies about his desire to forcibly expel the Alliance from Kalimdor and claim the continent for the good of the Horde. Garrosh intended to scour Terramore from the continent and stunt the Alliance's military presence. With that done, he then aimed to take the Night Elves' land. After the successful destruction of Terramore, the battle force returned to Orgrimmar to celebrate their victory. Many cheers rose to Garrosh's victory. Over the course of Mists of Pandaria, Garrosh became increasingly crazed and tyrannical, turning the Horde against him, and Orgrimmar changed it to reflect this. Orgrimmar was effectively put under martial law as Garrosh continued to oppress the non-orc members of the city. All non-orc districts of the city lost most of their supplies and were heavily guarded by the Corcoran under suspicion that they might be working with the rebels. The supply lines to Orgrimmar from the northern barons were cut off, and Vol'jin had taken the strategic settlement of Razor Hill from Garrosh's loyalists, essentially putting the city under threat of siege from the rebellion to the south, as well as the Alliance Armada amassing to the east. During the siege of Orgrimmar, the city was put under siege by the forces of the Horde rebels and the Alliance. Corcoran barricades blocked access to most of the city's districts. Vol'jin's revolutionary forces had entrenched themselves along the main road, launching a frontal assault on the city's gates to break into the Valley of Strength. Alliance frigates stormed the Bladefist Bay, and landing parties attempted to capture the docks around Orgrimmar. Invading forces discovered a massive underground compound constructed by Garrosh's forces for his own purposes. Skirmishes at the gates occurred before a full-scale battle erupted between the forces led by Vol'jin and the defenders still loyal to Garrosh. Despite Vol'jin's attempts to ram the gate and attack the walls with siege engines, the walls could not be breached. The arrival of a combined Rebel and Alliance Armada under the command of Lortimer Theron, Varian Rin, Jaina Proudmoore and Sylvanas Windrunner disabled Orgrimmar's naval defences. Eventually the Corcoran were pushed back into the gates, and the arrival of Night Elf reinforcements under Tyrande Whisperwind, Night Elf glaive throwers brought the gate down, and the allied forces charged into Orgrimmar. The Valley of Strength was quickly liberated, and the death of General Nazgrim brought the upper city under Alliance and Rebel control. The Underhold eventually fell when adventurers defeated and imprisoned the war chief Garrosh. Vol'jin was quickly nominated and initiated as the new war chief by Troll and the other Horde leaders. Alliance forces left the city, and the rebels began rebuilding the damage that was done during the siege. People and culture. Although orcs comprise the majority of the city's inhabitants, there is a strong troll presence here as well, primarily in the Valley of Spirits. With the recent change in leadership, Garrosh Hellscream has refurbished Orgrimmar's rustic and wooden architecture into reinforced steel and iron. The Horde races also use Orgrimmar as a centre of trade, not only of physical goods but ideas as well. For example, a number of different holidays are celebrated here, including a Tauren festival for the winter solstice and a number of others. The most significant figure in Orgrimmar was undoubtedly War Chief Garrosh Hellscream himself before his defeat during the siege of Orgrimmar. Geography. Orgrimmar is located in the far north of Durtar, at the foothills of the mountain range that separates Durtar from Azshara. Several valleys have been dug out from the mountain and provide a way of naturally dissecting the city into various zones, including the Valley of Spirits, Valley of Strength, Valley of Wisdom, and the Valley of Honour. Several specialty shops are found in the Drag, a pathway that leads from the Valley of Strength to the Valley of Honour. Those searching for potions or training in the darker arts of the rogue or warlock find a tunnel leading down to the Cleft of Shadow from the Drag. Orgrimmar received a heavy redesign in the Cataclysm expansion. The Tauren, Trolls and Goblins each have their own sections of the city now, complete with architecture that reflects their culture. They are respectively the Valley of Wisdom, Valley of Spirits, and the newly added Goblin Slums. Each of these areas has their own bank, auction house and trainers. Architecture in the remaining sections of Orgrimmar, minus the seedy Cleft of Shadow, reflect a Northrend feel with blackened metal and giant structures. A number of buildings have been completely moved, like the main auction house in the Valley of Strength. Garrosh has built Gromash Hold, the main seat of power, within this valley, offering a giant symbol of imposing power to those visiting. There are other changes of note. A rear entry now leads to Ashara, accessed by passing through the Valley of Honor. The Valley of Honor is now also a second trade district for those wishing to avoid the hustle and bustle of the Valley of Strength, and also houses most of the profession trainers. The drag is now open air, and there are more entry points into the Cleft of Shadow from other valleys. Perhaps the most notable change is that the Zeppelin towers that once stood outside the gates of Orgrimmar have been demolished and brought inside, rebuilt upon the Orgrimmar Skyway. The Wyvern Master has also been moved here, and the Western Earth Shrine, offering portals to all the newly discovered zones in the Cataclysm as well as Tulbarad, rests across the divide. Thank you for watching, and as always remember, play the game and game to play.